Adamczyk, CEO of Planted Detroit. Thank you for joining me on the Vertical Farming Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Harry. Excited to be here.
So, where's home for you?
Right now in Howell, Michigan.
Howell, Michigan.
I'm about an
where's
hour
that?
out. I'm about an hour outside of Detroit.
Okay. Got a special place in my heart for Detroit because growing up, I am into electronic music, house music, and so I learned to DJ at 16 and was in clubs before I could even was old enough to drink. So, been to lots of festivals and specifically movement with my ex for 9 years in a row. So that was really good experience, and it's amazing to see what it did for the city during that time as well.
Yeah, the city of Detroit has it's produced a lot of great music over the years, and
Yeah,
a lot has come out of that town.
yeah. Were you born and raised there?
I grew up just south of Detroit in a suburb called Southgate, Michigan.
Okay.
Have always lived here though, in and around.
Yeah.
Went to the University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. Worked in Southfield for several years at an investment banking company.
Okay.
Uh, and yeah, this has always been home to me.
What's life growing up there like?
It's awesome. Just really hardworking people. People that are neighborly, willing to help one another. When we go through hard times, there's always a community to call on that you can circle
Yeah.
the wagons around and support one another. And that's definitely ingrained in the culture here. I know the city of Detroit has a pretty long and rocky history.
Yeah.
It's actually a beautiful history and a lot of good things that have come out of it, and a really a lot of culture and a lot of people that are all focused around building things.
Hmm.
The history of Detroit has been automating vehicles for over 100 years, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of companies and startup companies and opportunities for people that have been created out of that industry. And again, it's speckled with the rocky history along the way. But there's a revitalization that's going on, attracting new businesses back into this community,
Yeah.
uh, and really doing some wonderful things.
So you studied business, university, and is that something that you had your eye on when you went into college? That you really were focused on finance and business?
Uh, you know, yes, I think since I was about 12 years old, I have always had an interest in investing in finances and starting businesses. I was that kid in Southgate that had, 5, 6 lawns that I mowed every single week. Put that cash in my pocket, save it up.
Yeah.
I used to wash cars, paint garages, you name it, just to make some money and save up and save
Yeah.
for something that I wanted, which was a Camaro that could just blow the doors off. And
What year?
that's where it all started. And then I started investing. I got
Okay.
into the stock market at a young age, and had some good opportunities to make some money and let my money work for me. And that's one way I paid for my first car.
What year Camaro?
2000.
Okay.
My
Did you
wife,
have a fondness for the classics as well? I was always like the what was it? I think the '69 Camaro, which was always
yeah, I mean, just about every car show or
yeah.
woodward cruise, I was at it. That was always my interest, and I still have that car. It's sitting in my garage right here. It's kind of it's got some sentimental value to me.
Yeah.
There's been a couple times where my wife has wanted me to sell it, but it ain't happened.
Oh, and also, I mean, obviously for international folks, because I know they listen to the show as well. They may not understand the importance of cars to Detroit and to, Motor City, and how important it is, and how people, take their cars and what they drive seriously. There was a period of time, you probably were looked upon or frowned upon if you if you didn't have a Detroit-made car driving through that city.
Yeah, I mean, if you roll down the street of my neighborhood, just about every other house had a classic car in the garage, you know.
Yeah, very cool. And so, where did you get your work ethic, your investment ethic? Like, where'd that come from? Is that your folks?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, hindsight's 2020. It came from a lot of things. Definitely my mom and dad and the way they raised me.
Mm,
Uh, you know, just to work hard, have that work ethic. You know, if you
yeah,
want something, you go out and get it. If you don't know how to do something, you go and figure out how. You know, do your homework,
yeah,
and and if you're going to do something, do it the best that you possibly can.
hmm,
Uh, and that translated to everything in my life, not only business but sports and friends and relationships. Do it to its fullest potential. So that work ethic was ingrained in me, and then as I matured, um, you know, I was really passionate about being, learning a lot of different things and being good at just about everything. It was just a competitive nature in me,
yeah,
and I wanted to learn everything, and that really translated nicely into business. Because within business and as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to understand a little bit of everything from the
yeah.
finance side to sales and marketing to operations. You got to be technical, have some IT knowledge. There's a lot of components of a business that you need to understand at least something about it, each and every one of them.
Yeah.
And that's all of those things. I constantly surround myself with more and more information, and just a hunger to learn more all the time.
What sports did you play?
I played basketball, soccer, and baseball primarily,
Okay. Yeah.
uh, and then I love golf. I like to hunt. I like to
Yeah.
fish. I'm outdoors. I really do a lot of different things, and I love every bit of it. Now that I'm older, I've got 4 kids now, and
Mm,
they're all into sports, and I get to
yeah.
coach them. And so that's always fun and fascinating.
Yeah. And pass on that work ethic as well, I might imagine.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, and I'll try and be an example for them.
Yeah. So when you got out of school, you were focused on a job in finance, and it seems like you've been doing that for a while. So can you talk a little bit as we move into like plant to Detroit? But I'm just a little bit curious about what that experience was like, and I know that you still do some of that now. So what's it like to be in that world?
Yeah, while I was in school, there was, as I kind of think back to even entering the University of Michigan, there was just so much uncertainty at that point in my life, right? Where you don't know what your career is going to look like.
Hmm.
You don't know where you're going to live, who you're going to work for, how it's all going to come together. And the beauty of, being 15 years out or so, looking back and seeing all of the stepping stones, all of the learning opportunities have been amazing. So in college, I was really focused on um, taking classes that were focused around finance, and in particular around equity markets.
Hmm.
Had a passion early on for investing in stocks, and I took a lot of classes around that, but also got into the extracurriculars, and was involved in what's called the Maize and Blue Fund. It's a student-run fund at the university. Got to work in small teams to identify stocks and do stock pitches and actually make investments using the
Hmm.
student. And that really was where my passion was. But I needed a job coming out of there, and I needed an internship, and going down those paths, I'm looking at, do I move to New York or Chicago?
Yeah.
And also my personal life, I had a daughter that I was raising during college.
Wow.
So I had some serious family responsibilities to think
Yeah,
about,
early on.
and that certainly kicked my butt in gear. And so, I ended up finding this company that was absolutely awesome for me. They've rebranded. They're called Stout. It was SRR when I started there, and I was an intern. And they gave me a ton of responsibility early on. I got to work on mergers and acquisitions across a lot of different industries. I ended up getting a full-time job offer out of my internship, and hit the ground running. I was hungry. I was young, energetic. Just
Yeah,
give me everything I want to learn. And so that was several years of grinding and long hours, and quite honestly, not seeing the family for several days or weeks. But it was all necessary in order for me to progress and learn. And I got to travel a little bit. I got to work with the CEOs and CFOs of middle market public companies, large private companies, and I got to see the kind of the whole back end of the corporate world,
yeah,
uh, which was really necessary for me to learn that back end, to then make a career transition into private wealth management and running equity portfolios. So I got to take that experience that I got right out of college with really doing a deep dive into company financials and translate a lot of that into the investment opportunities that were available in the public markets. So I started trading an equity portfolio in 2014, and since then it's done great. It's been a fantastic market. Had some awesome opportunities, and certainly a low interest rate environment's been super helpful for the last decade.
yeah,
Um, but now we're transitioning into a new economic environment, and it's a challenge. And I still do that. My portfolio management is still ongoing, and it's a challenging environment, but it's still where my passion lies. And Planted Detroit was born out of that.
yeah.
It's I don't want to jump too far ahead. Ultimately, where it came from is that investment perspective.
So we will definitely will jump into that. I'm just curious. I'm always grateful for the mentors that I've had along the way, and I'm wondering if it's been the same for you as you were having these experiences and building this company. If there were relationships and mentors that were instrumental or helpful for you.
Yeah, I'm the type of person that is always looking for resources. So reaching out to my network to when I have a gap to fill. And I have my mentors, within my family, my parents, certainly my sister as well. Um, but outside of family, it's been colleagues that I've worked with in the past that are just
Yeah,
really, really smart individuals, that are typically older than me and have experiences, that they can look back on. And I'm a big fan of learning from your elders,
yeah,
talking to the folks that are 70, 80, 90 years old. That's really where I get a lot of my
yeah.
um, a lot of my work ethic and inspiration from. Um, and so I think it's important to recognize that people around you all have different opinions about things, right? And they have opinions that are based on their own personal experiences and their diverse backgrounds.
Yeah,
And so we need to leverage that. We need to
yeah.
think, listen, and really absorb, be a sponge, and listen to the people around you. And then that's how you can kind of formulate your own opinions or your own pillars that you're going to live by.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned and brought that up. I've been conscious of just like how society is hopefully waking up to this concept of I've heard it described as grandma wisdom and grandpa wisdom, right? Like I mean, you talk about people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're towards the twilight of their career and or their life, and then there's something special about the wisdom that they do hold, and it's something that was obvious for indigenous cultures, and I think hopefully it's coming back around. And when you think about where we're headed as a society, how the aging population, and what's happening with them, how are we taking care of them, it's something that's been top of mind because there is a lot of wisdom contained in those folks, and I hope we can do better by them than we have in the past, and I think it's valuable and a helpful reminder. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do think about my grandparents and all of the things that they've been through. My grandma and grandpa Adamczyk, they grew up just outside of Detroit, but long history there. They went through the Great Depression, and these were the people that when I grew up, I would laugh because they would reuse their napkins or reuse their plastic forks, and they went through this period of time where even basic necessities were of concern. Food shortages and going through in and out of employment and recessions. But also still with them, the work ethic was instilled. My grandpa worked at Tiger Stadium on the weekends as a ticket guy and at the post office during the week. He had 9 kids, and he did everything he could to support them. Hold on one second here.
Yeah, no worries.
Yep. Give me 1 second here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an online thing. Just use that. All right, sorry about that. I have a couple. I've got a couple of sick kids.
That's okay.
I had to go to the doctors earlier with them. I'm assuming we can edit some of this out.
Yeah. We'll edit it out.
So let me get now my dogs are out barking.
Yeah, no worries. All good.
All right, should be all good. Like I said, a couple of sick kids trying to get some medication, and it's always something in this household when you got.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably 370 plus interviews over that since 2014. So I think I've seen every sort of interruption you can think of.
Well, I can resume. I think where I left off was really talking about my grandpa, because I think this is an important piece.
Yeah.
So kind of getting back to it, my grandpa had 9 kids that he was struggling to support.
Yeah.
But he looked to his community and his family to support him, and he had a brother. My great uncle Joe, who had a grocery store in Southwest Detroit, and he was really like the pillar in his community. People depended on him for their basic needs and their their food and their milk and their eggs, and he would offer my grandpa the opportunity to come to the store and get food for free when they needed it, right? And really, he didn't just do it for my grandpa; he did it for a lot of people. When people were struggling, he's willing to, all right, you can pay me back when you get it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that sense of community was really important to me because, you have to depend on one another. And, just kind of thinking about what my grandparents went through, they definitely saw a lot. And now we're starting to see it, with our generation and going through this pandemic, and, COVID is just ripped a hole in what we thought was normal life. And but what I see, at least in my personal experience with it, is that sense of community, people coming together to help one another out. And I think that's really important, and we really got to build on that as a society.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I didn't plan it this way, but I started looking into this, to researching the topic and the show, and then I started the interviews in March of 2020. And as we just kind of chatted about earlier, like I didn't even know if people were ready to have conversations, and I think there's this mindset of like that life has got to go on, and we've got to push through some of these hardships sometimes, and I'm glad like everyone in those early guests, stuck with it. And I think what was interesting is just the realization of um, how fragile our supply chains were, our ability to have fresh food locally, food deserts, all these topics which sort of came, were front of mind, and dependency on food from outside sources. And so it's been so really interesting to hear the stories and to have people be awakened to that, and some, forced into this conversation, obviously through COVID, but, showing the resiliency of coming out on the other side. And, a lot of companies and CEOs had to really figure out like what their teams were made of, what they were made of, and how to get through this in a way. And so we saw a lot of very inspiring leaders step up, and help carry their team through this. And I'm just wondering, I don't get to talk about it too much, but how that period of time was for you, and what challenges you had to go through, and then how you came out through it on the other side.
You know, so where do I start? I mean, if I think about April of 2020 when everything shut down, first and foremost, the thought goes to how do I protect my family?
Yeah.
I'm a family man, and I just got to make sure, one, I protect my family. Um, and once I got that security, it was, how can I help my neighbors? How do I help my friends and family around me? And that extends all the way to, the business and the teams and the people, and making sure you're there for them, supporting them. And also, again, uh, putting weight on your skill sets that you have. And so for me, that was, that's finance and investing. So I buckled down, right? And it was
Yeah.
a tumultuous time, but being able to continue, my investment business, and really, really actually do well during that period of time, um, as well as grow the Planet Detroit business. That was, that's something that I started in 2018, but by 2020, it was evidence that this is a really critical business, not only for, for me, but for the people that we're supplying food to.
Yeah.
And so that was, that pandemic moment and the months that followed, was really a testament to that business and the team there. And hindsight again is 2020, but the team at Planet Detroit did a phenomenal job of being able to support one another, buckle down, keep the business operating as a critical infrastructure business. And we kept supplying food to our community all throughout it. And it was a blessing in disguise. It allowed us to expand production. It allowed us to focus on the areas that the business needed to grow into. And what came out of the pandemic for us is evidence that a ready-to-eat salad is something that we can sell in volume, and people love it, and it's healthy and nutritious. And that's how the business evolved ultimately coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's been I guess making lemonade out of lemons when you get it.
Yeah.
So um, we were able to pivot, and ultimately the business and the teams came out better on the other side.
Appreciate you sharing that. So rewinding the clock back a little bit, I'm just curious, like, when and how did vertical farming come on your radar? And talk a little bit about the origin story on those early days of Planet Detroit.
Yeah. So again, looking back at my career and all of the things that were really pointing to what ultimately became Planet Detroit came from a lot of different angles. Primarily from my experience with working with corporations up and down the food supply chain. Early on in my career, I got to
Hmm.
do some really cool mergers and acquisitions with food distributors, grocery retailers, um, and also I got to work all the way upstream with the farmers and ag land. And what that presented to me was that some of these companies are really struggling in these low margin businesses. And I was able to think about the whole food supply chain from really a 30,000-foot view, and ultimately thinking about the end consumer and what the end consumer wants. We want healthy, safe, and nutritious food, high quality food. And what we're getting is lower and lower quality food, and it's actually becoming unsafe at times.
Yeah.
And at the same time, prices are going up. So we're paying more and more for lower and lower quality. So the economics of that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then thinking about the whole supply chain from the farmer to the distributors to the grocery retailers, and many of them were struggling, all along the way. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I got to look at farmers' P&Ls, and what I noticed within their cost structure is the rising need and cost of fertilizer. They're dependent, they're dependent on the weather. They're dependent on hitting the yields that they need and hoping that prices stay where they're at or go up. And in order to de-risk that business, they have to pump fertilizer into their soils. They have
Yeah.
to, fungicides, insecticides, herbicides to protect their crop.
Yeah.
And that to me was kind of the eye opener of, all right, let's look at some of these fertilizer companies. And so that's when I did. And I think it was 2015, there was Bayer's acquisition of Monsanto's.
Yep.
And that was kind of an eye opener for me that once you look at that Monsanto's acquisition, those guys were making garbage cans full of money. And that to me was a trigger that's where a lot of the economics are. The economic profits are going to the fertilizer companies, the chemical companies, and I just personally didn't think it was right. Um, and so that's what ultimately led me to doing research and a deeper dive into alternative growing methods, um, research in hydroponics, and ultimately vertical farming and the economics around it. And got me to the point where I wanted to invest in the space. I
Hmm.
want I want to start, taking some of my funds and allocating that to this space because I think it's going to take off. But once I got into the weeds of it, a lot of the companies were very immature and very risky investments, even from a venture cap startup phase. And I didn't feel super comfortable with that risk. And ultimately, so after several years of research, um, and finally said, you know what, I'm going to start something close to home, something that I can de-risk by being involved in it
Yeah.
and by learning it. So that was my due diligence, and that's how Planet Detroit was born. Build a facility that I can learn, I can collect the data on, and understand every component of it. And so that's when it started in 2018. Moved into a old industrial warehouse in Detroit in August, and started building the teams. Surrounding myself with people that are different experiences, different backgrounds than me. And now a lot of those people are still with me today. They are part of my leadership team at Planet Detroit. And there's five of us that sit there together and we brainstorm ideas and we learn from one another. They have plant science backgrounds,
Yeah.
microbiology, grocery and marketing, as well as construction and, a lot of different aspects. So that's how it started, and it slowly grew over time. And what was really fascinating to me was some of my initial questions getting into the business was by growing in an indoor controlled environment under LED lights, what is this food going to taste like?
Yeah.
Going to taste like soap? Literally, those were the questions in my head that I wanted to solve. And the team ended up growing 66 different varieties of crops, uh,
Wow.
lettuces, herbs, microgreens, and we got to tap into our culinary community in Detroit, work directly with the chefs. And that was that moment where when they tasted it and they were able to change the taste of the products and really perfect them, that I knew we were, this is a viable option for growing food in the future. The next question was, can you do it economically? And so that's where I sat for a while, pulling data and picking the brains of my people, and really building the model around an income statement for every product that we grow. And really building out that formula of time from seed to harvest, all of the inputs, and what is your output. And that's what ultimately we've been doing for the last 4 years. It's trial and error, experimentation, and identifying what you can grow really well. And then there's a lot of tailwinds with the benefits of growing indoors.
It's what's interesting is that whole entire background that we talked about earlier in the conversation that you brought to bear in these decisions and this decision making and how you thought about not only building the team but also the profitability of these individual crops, which ones were performing best, ensuring that you would have a market, ensuring that you would have a buyer, and it's a lot of things people don't give a lot of thought to, but I think it's important that you were looking at it from all the different aspects of it, how this was going to be successful, and even the experience you had in working with these companies on the finance side and understanding from an M&A perspective. So it really feels like you were positioned to be in this place to really have a lot of success with this. And I'm sure going into a new industry, as much as you've learned when you were making those deals, there's nothing like having like the hands-on experience, the day-to-day experience of building a team. And I'm wondering what that was like, as you were moving and developing into this role and what would eventually become the CEO role.
Yeah. You know, it's funny when you start a business, and I think this probably goes for a lot of entrepreneurs, is you don't run a business. The business runs you. And you have to accept that fact that you got to go with the flow and roll with the punches. I couldn't predict at day one that we would be exactly right where we are now at year four. The people, the systems, the complexity. No way I could have predicted that. What was important for this type of business, and certainly for your audience in the vertical farming industry, you got to have a long time horizon. This is
Yeah.
not good. You are inventing an industry, and there is not a supply chain built underneath you. And so you got to have that. You got to have that patience and that time and that um, that thought process in place from the beginning. Um, Developing that team out has been amazing. What's even more fascinating now is those teams have teams. And as the business grows, we've got almost 70 employees now at Planted. Uh,
Oh,
that grew from 11 in April of 2020, when you could shout across the table to somebody,
yeah. Yeah.
to now having to build processes of proper communication in place in order to
Yeah.
form one another. And yeah, it's that growth from 11 to over 50. That was a major challenge, in order to maintain consistency and in your end product. And it's definitely something that we look back on and say, wow, that was a crazy 2 years, a lot different than the previous two. Um, and it's going to continue to be, over the next 2 years, um, as we grow. And the name of this business is scale. You got to get to scale, but you got to do it in the right ways.
What's been the biggest growth for you as a leader, since you've taken over that role?
That's a good question. I would say, just by my nature, I tend to be a bit of a humble person. Um, so, being that person that everybody looks to, um, as a CEO title, as owner of the business, as that point person. I don't mind that pressure or that stress, right? Like that's like being the captain of a sports team. I love that. But really recognizing that you're responsible for everybody it's not a challenge. It's just it's something that you got to utilize to motivate you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's way bigger than yourself. In the business and everything you're working towards for growth, for profitability, for sales, for scale. All of that is great and important. But at the end of the day, it's the people that matter, and they're looking to you. They're relying on you to make the right decisions when the time is right. And it's something I just think about it all the time. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and I love every aspect of it.
What's for the listener, for the folks who may not be familiar with Planted Detroit, what was the business model, and who was the client or the ideal customer, and what were the offerings, and how has that shifted to present day?
Yeah, so Planted Detroit from a high level, it's a vertical hydroponic farm, and on the east side of Detroit, we've got a 20,000 square foot warehouse. It really started though in about 10% of that as R&D. 2,500 square feet. We were growing a bunch of different crops at low volume and selling to the restaurants. Working with the chefs directly in order to perfect the taste profile. That quickly transformed into the design of the entire 20,000 square foot facility to incorporate everything from automation, more advanced machinery and equipment, to the food safety aspect of our operation. Selecting food safe materials, having food safe processes in place. All of that was really necessary to develop that strategy early on when you're at small scale before you get to that 20,000 square foot level. And so we built that out, and that allowed us to expand our volumes significantly. We incorporated automation into many components of the growing operation. We developed the salad products that are our primary revenue stream right now. And that was developed, I believe, in November of 2019. We kind of put together our first prototype salad.
Okay.
And as the pandemic hit and our restaurants closed their doors, and were forced to, that business dried up immediately. And we were able to pivot and sell our ready-to-eat salads direct to consumer, and then also on grocery store shelves, and then started developing partnerships with, Henry Ford Health Systems, and got into the hospitals, and really just started the snowball that really went, on its own downhill from there. And ever since then, we continue to build new products, having new taste profiles, new ingredients, new dressings, and really tackling that direct to consumer farm to fork concept where people can go online and buy right from planteddetroit.com, and we're going to deliver it right to your door, right to your office. And you can even set up a subscription and it'll show up at your doorstep whenever you want it.
Did you ever thought you'd be in a salad business 10 years ago?
Oh, no, to be totally honest with you, I didn't even really like eating vegetables. I I honestly wasn't a salad person. Now I eat a salad almost every day
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they do taste great. I mean, it's an amazing product, and that was one of the things as an investor in a company, you gotta love the product. You got to see
definitely.
potential in it, and that's really grown, organically into my life,
Yeah,
uh, where people just, they're constantly talking to me about salads and in the business, and and I love talking about it, but it's in every conversation. It seems like.
that's great. So what's the future hold? Obviously, I'm sure you've got stuff on the roadmap. It's probably given what's happened the past couple of years, doesn't make sense to look out past 6 months or a year. But what do you have in the works, and where do you see the opportunities for plants in Detroit?
Yeah, so that roadmap has become clearer and clearer over time. As I said, I couldn't have predicted where we are now 4 years ago. But taking all of those learnings and everything that we've done, and now apply it to a 5 to 10 year plan, is really exciting. We're laser focused on our market, the Detroit market, Southeast Michigan, and our facility is it's ramping up. We're constantly scaling into our sales with production. We do a bit of just in time manufacturing process, and so that facility is still ramping up to its full production capacity. In the meantime, we're building a second facility right next door. That facility is going to be another 9,000 square feet of production. Different technology investments there in terms of some automation around irrigation and fertigation, environmental controls, and all of those components, but also geared towards expanding our product category. So we're pretty excited about being able to supply edible flowers to our pastry chefs and our restaurant customers, as well as introduce those products to the everyday consumer through our ready-to-eat salads. So those are the things that are currently in the works. And then we are raising capital for the first time, going to outside investors to build
Okay.
a couple of larger facilities that are going to be focused on the Detroit area. And so that's the slow and steady scale that I'm a huge proponent of. A lot of people ask me about, when is, Planted Chicago, or you name it, coming. Can't tell you when.
Planted Minneapolis.
When. That's a why in our journey that we'll take when we get there.
Yeah.
Our journey right now is Detroit. We're going to
Yeah.
build the best, most food safe, most highly productive, automated facilities with just the best products coming out of them. That's what we're laser focused on, and we've got a great market here. We haven't really spent a whole lot of money at all on marketing, and so that's a new challenge for us. But it's exciting because that's going to drive growth for us on the top line once we start telling the people in the world what we're doing. We've got 4 years under our belts where we've learned a lot. But now we've got a fantastic product that we're ready to sell. Just really to anybody that likes salad in Detroit.
Or even if you think you don't, you got a lot to learn.
Great point. If I was converted, so
Yeah.
you be too.
What's a tough question you've had to ask yourself recently?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Oh, I would say if I think about when I wake up in the morning, what do I ask myself?
Yeah.
It's a simple question. What are you going to do today?
Mm,
As an entrepreneur, there's a million things that you need to do.
yeah.
Prioritize. I think it's a component of what are you going to do with your time? And again, I'm a humble person, so I'm not the type that's going to say, my time's more valuable than yours. It's simply time is valuable. It's valuable to everybody.
Yeah.
The one thing that Warren Buffett says that you can't buy time.
Yeah.
And so I cherish that. I cherish my time. I think about what am I going to do with it. I think about my family. I think about my businesses, and I think about Planet Detroit specifically. Um, it's a huge time component. It's a huge investment, but it has so much opportunity, and it's something that I think for me personally is a major personal achievement to be able to build and create something new that has an impact on people's lives. It really checks all of the boxes in terms of, environmental sustainability, shortening the food supply chain, bringing, good paying jobs to, potentially, impoverished areas. It can solve some of the food insecurity issues that we're experiencing. It checks all the boxes. And to me, with my background in finance, and I think about trading stocks or doing the valuation work that I used to do. I wasn't creating any real value,
Yeah.
or not value to me.
Yeah.
And when you can build something that produces food at a rapid rate, that's pretty fascinating. That's something that I can wrap my head around and really get behind. So that's probably the most challenging question is, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your time?
Yeah.
My answer is, I'm gonna cherish every minute of it, and I'm gonna apply my skill sets to what I think can bring the most value to people.
That makes sense. So given the audience of this show, it's your peers, your colleagues in this space, I always like to leave a couple of minutes towards the end. If you have an ask or if you have something, you want to say or anything for the folks in this industry, it's such a new industry, and I think we're all learning from each other. So I'd like to just give you a couple of minutes for anything that comes to mind.
No, I appreciate that. It is at times it feels like you are inventing an industry. Um, and that's a struggle. I really think that there's many of us trying to do similar things. And as you just mentioned, you have to learn from one another. I think that's something that's going to be necessary over the next couple of years is providing a platform where we can share information, share ideas, share whatever it might be with one another. The the pie is pretty big in terms of market size, uh, and a lot of us are pretty small still.
Yeah.
So really putting our heads together to think about, what are you doing that's maybe better than what we're doing? Um, Maybe you're growing something just a little bit faster or a little bit better than us. That's something that's of value, and we got to figure out how to build a table where we can all sit around it and talk about those things,
Yeah.
and also do it in a way that's it makes business sense.
Yeah.
Uh, if you've got the best technology that can grow X, Y, and Z crop, then man, I'd love to license that from you. If you figured out some sort of recipe, a secret sauce, I'd like to license that from you. If you have, we certainly are working every day to create the best possible, most efficient processes. I'm sure we're onto a few things, but uh, I would love for us and other vertical farms to grow bigger and faster sooner, so that the supply chain underneath us can build as well. We're starting to see components of that. We're starting to see some automation and technology providers. We've definitely seen it on the LED lighting side with the investment and blow up of the cannabis industry. The economics are getting better and better for our industry, but we need just like the automotive industry in Detroit. They built tier one, tier two, tier three suppliers.
Yeah.
Well, we need
Yeah.
that from media companies, from trade companies, from technology providers, from
Yeah.
software providers. And I feel like we're having to create a lot of that in house ourselves, which at times can become frustrating to me, at least personally, coming into this industry.
And I think considering where you're from and considering, the automotive industry and how it's a great model, when you think about all the different ways the partners work with each other and support each other, and everyone's focused on their specialties, and how, when everyone is aiming for the bigger picture of the growth of the industries, where you see like a lot of the innovation happening. And I think, to your point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it is important to think about, the rising tide lifting all boats, metaphor, and just how we are still new, and there is a tendency sometimes to kind of like hone in and sort of like secret sauce, and like I'm doing something that's super special. But I think there is some opportunity, and I think, maybe by virtue of these conversations, or maybe just kind of these connections, we can, think about opportunities to facilitate some type of, coming to the table and just sharing, best ideas, best practices. We may walk away still with everyone, keeping everything under wraps, but I think, there's no harm in trying to see, where there's opportunities and where there's people that are looking to think more expansively, for where we want this industry to go.
Yeah, and you know what? This podcast is one element of it, right? Getting information out. That's really important, and I don't think was really necessarily available several years ago. The academic world is also pushing along. There's some great groups that we're a part of, that are starting to provide that medium for sharing information. There's industry groups that are starting to form. It's great to see. But my background comes from M&A, and I do have a prediction that at some point in the next eight years, a couple of these farms need to come together, under one umbrella, and really formulate that table of bringing all this know-how to the table, and let's make the biggest and best food producing company possible.
Yeah. Very inspiring, Tom. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your origin story. It's very inspiring to see how, like, and your humility comes through in this conversation. But it's also a testament to, the way you were raised and your background. And we talked about like the inspiration from your grandparents, and that's clear in terms of like how you've been able to build your career, and then figuring out what's important for you, and what type of legacy you want to leave, and how important family is to you. So I think it's just a really inspiring story. I appreciate you sharing it, and it's really one of those things that gets people inspired about the possibilities of what we can do if we just stay focused and we share common values.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me. I hope that you find your way to Detroit at some point.
Yeah, I will.
I would love to get you a salad, and certainly for anybody that's that's thinking about or traveling to or connected within this Detroit community, reach out to us. We're an open book. We're transparent. We're a great team, and we're really trying to be a good neighbor, to our other businesses. We partner a lot with small businesses, medium-sized businesses. Again, trying to be a good neighbor and facilitate growth for one another. And then certainly if you're a salad lover, go on planteddetroit.com and try us out. But from here on out, it's going to be a whirlwind. And I think what you're going to see is some of the best products coming out of Planted Detroit.
I can totally see it happen. I'll definitely take you up on that. We're not too far. I'm in Minneapolis, so it shouldn't be too far to get over there. I think probably even make a drive over there.
That's it.
Yeah. So
there may be a day where you might be able to get it shipped to you.
Yeah.
Over there in Minneapolis, but I really am trying to avoid doing that.
Yeah, trying to defeat the purpose of having everything local, but we'll have to work on Planet Minneapolis and see how that comes around.
I'm a big fan of it.
So Planet Detroit for the website. Anywhere else you want to send folks to connect with you or the company?
Yeah, certainly we have some great partnerships with Plum Market in the Detroit area, also out in Ann Arbor. You can find our products at Henry Ford Health Systems in the hospitals. So you can try us out there. We're at probably your local restaurant, either listed there on the menu, or maybe a component of their salads or a microgreen or herb on top. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, look for us doing big things for the city. Really excited about what we have in the works here, and hopefully, in not too long of time, we can come back on this and talk about that next set of facilities.
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate you sharing your story. Thanks again, Tom.
I appreciate it.